Good morning and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haines of Sky High and Fly Jump Camps fame. And today I'm going to be talking with Mr. Brady Wert, who is a multi and jumps coach at Penn West, California in Pennsylvania. So let that wash over you. And we're just going to be talking shop. So get ready to hear some amazing stuff on Raise the Bar with Troy Haines.
I think I got you. Can you hear me, Brady?
Yep. Can you hear
Awesome.
me?
Yes, sir. Got
Awesome.
Good morning. How's it going?
Oh, it's going well. It's been a crazy couple days. So
You guys are in the afternoon out there, right?
yeah,
So California, Pennsylvania, do I have that right?
correct. Yes.
Okay. How confusing is that?
It depends on where you're from. Um, it's always an interesting conversation starter with people because they are like, "Where are you from?"
Yeah.
Um, we're like, "Yeah, California, Pennsylvania." And when we go to meets around here, sometimes it actually happens more so in New York City. When we
Hmm.
go out there, they're like, "Oh, like how was the trip?" And people are like, "Oh, we drove here." And they're like, "You guys are crazy." And it's like, and then
Right.
the kids that we coach are like, I think they're under the assumption that we're actually from California.
Right. Right. Well,
So
it's funny because I started to do a little intro and I was doing a little rambling just to get myself loosened up. And I know in California, there's a Pittsburgh, California, up north.
yeah,
So my brain had already done that flip. I thought that you were from Northern California because I just flipped Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, which isn't too difficult to do. But so yeah, I just found that interesting. I actually have a friend, teacher friend who moved up to Pittsburgh, California, and became a middle school PE teacher. So I was like, Sheila, if you're out there listening to Raise the Bar, uh, you we're talking about you. So Brady, this is the first time we get a chance to talk. I was looking at your Instagram, and I long running story on the the podcast is that a lot of the contacts that I make is through Instagram. So I know that there's Twitter, X out there, and I know there's TikTok and all that, but I really haven't done anything on those platforms. So I've spent time, posting my videos and all that. And then on my feed, I just have, crazy hashtags that are all about jumping and anything explosive training, high, long, and triple, pole vault, on and on and on. And so those are the things that tend to come by. So, if
yep,
somebody followed something that I liked, I may bump into them if I'm looking through my likes or something like that, or if I see somebody decided to follow me. Other times I'll get stuff on my feed, where I'll see, people working. So, um, that I can't remember, to be honest, which way that worked with you, but I remember looking through your profile and seeing, multis and jump coach and all that. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you got started doing track and field?
oh man. Uh, well, it's kind of an interesting story. I get more people now that I coach that have asked this, so I'm working on refurbishing it. But I grew up, I was an only child, so my parents threw me in athletics. Um, I actually was a diehard baseball fan.
Mhm.
Ironically, when I got into middle school, I tried out for the combined seventh and eighth grade uh, baseball team, which I thought I was a sure thing to make because of how well I was playing going up to that point, and I unfortunately was cut. And so my dad just was like, "Hey, let's keep you active. Like you high jumped when you're in third grade. We had it in our gym class,
Right.
and you really enjoyed it. Why don't you join the track team?" So I had joined it, and I did all right. Back when I thought like 4'10" was a really good PR. Like
Right.
I couldn't have been much taller, like honestly. I was a short guy. And the next year they changed the coach for baseball and they're like, "You're gonna try out, right?" Because of the politics, behind certain sports. And I was like,
Mhm.
nah, I'm good. And then I ended up jumping 5 foot, did some other events, went into high school, was like, all right, I don't want to mess with the bureaucrats, like the politics behind baseball. Because in track, it's awesome. It's very binary, right? Like you either
Yeah.
do or do not. You either
Right.
are good. I don't say you're not good, but you could be somewhere in the middle, but you either jumped the height or you didn't.
Right.
And yeah, and that kind of really kickstarted things. I went to college, thought I was going to play soccer. Uh, I was really I was not very good at being on the ball with stuff, given that I was an only child. You would have thought that I was, with my parents, only having me and
Right.
only needing to worry about me for college and stuff. But long story short is I had to redshirt my freshman year because I wasn't the best academic student in high school. And after seeing success in the year that I was just training with the track team and couldn't join the soccer team, I decided no different than baseball. I was like, well, forget spring ball. I like this. I think I have a good future. And then that led to several conference titles, a couple national championship berths, where then I, had dreams of qualifying for the Olympic trials. And,
Hmm.
like many people, it didn't necessarily come true. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, I got into the multi events. Ironically, because a coach told me I wasn't good enough as a high jumper to join his team, which he wasn't wrong. Like
Right.
I was 6'1", I was a 6'1" high jumper, and he had just come back from nationals with like a 7-footer and a 6'10", 6'11" guy.
Right.
And that's really what kind of breached me into the multi world. So yeah.
Okay. So where did you do all this competing? What college were you at?
Yeah. So I was actually at Slippery Rock University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So my parents went to the PSAC for schools, and they didn't really play sports. And so I went to Slippery Rock because I had pretty good programs. I had a good track program. That's where I met now retired head coach John Papa. Um, when I met him, he was very inspiring. He's a coach that I admire, and he's at my wedding, and I'm really excited to try to be a portion of him and like take what I learned from him and then distribute that to the people I coach. And
Right.
the mentality that he gave me was like, how can I help you help me? Instead of it being like, how can you help me?
Right.
How can you help the team? So, but yeah, I was at good old Slippery Rock. And around here, it's kind of a swear word, because we're in the same conference. But
Okay. So PSAC, was that, what does that stand for? The Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference. Yep.
Okay.
So we have 18 schools in our conference. Shepherd is the only one that is not in the state of Pennsylvania. Some of the schools obviously don't have track and field, but it's a pretty big conference. I've been to a lot of meets, and I'm gonna throw this out there. Outside of Penn relays, I don't know that there's an atmosphere like our conference championship that you'll find at other places.
Oh yeah. Awesome.
Yeah,
Now, is that, what level is that? Is that a D1, D2, NAIA? Where you at?
yeah, it's a Division II school.
Division two. Okay.
Yep.
And then, so when you're competing, you threw decathlon out there and some other, conference championships and whatnot. So, was that in the decathlon itself, or were you, where did you make your great mark? You're talking about, winning conference championships and then being good enough to think about the Olympic trials and the Olympics. So, give us some numbers.
Yeah, so in 2010, I had a 400-point PR. So it was like going into my fourth year in college. Like I said, I had redshirted my freshman year. And when I put that score together of 5,016, it was a pretty big benchmark. I didn't realize it until, a year or two later. Typically they say once you go 5,000, 7,000 is right around the corner.
Uh-huh.
So I did not, ironically, when I scored 5,000 points, I did not win our conference title. I actually went to nationals ranked fifth in the country. I was not very, I wouldn't say I wasn't very competitive, but going from like the conference to national level, I just wasn't, I guess, mentally prepared for that. So um, outdoor that year, I would win our conference title. Missed going to nationals by a couple spots. I actually was in the middle of a multi decathlon, and I got rejected on a pole. I was holding 15 feet in the air, came down, smacked my face off the ground.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I was having a heck of a meet. PRs left and right. I was like, this is it. I'm gonna go, 66. I'm gonna go
Right.
68. Um, and I still put up a good score, but wasn't good enough to get to the outdoor championship. And then the next year, I won indoors and outdoors in the HEP and the deck, and went to nationals in both. I was a little banged up indoors at nationals, and then outdoors, I was ranked third in the country, and I got DQ'd in the 400, and I'm sure you
Mm.
can understand how that felt. But they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and
Right.
I had gone 67, 85, and something that was I was going to my last conference championship, and I was like really nervous. I wanted to win. I wanted to go to nationals. I wanted to be an All-American. And the one thing that stuck with me was something that my coach had said was, you don't need to have a great day, you just have to have an average day. If you put
Right.
an average mark down in every single event, you'll win the conference. Well,
Yeah.
that average score put me third in the country, and out of the 10 events, I might have had less than a handful performances that I was like, above average. So
Yeah.
in my mind, I was like, okay, uh, there's plenty of points that I left out on the table.
Yeah.
Um, and my senior year, I had a lot of injuries because I was really going hard, um, because I was really upset about not making it to outdoors the year
Yeah.
before, and yeah, so but yeah, PRs 5,000, 16 in the HEP, and 67, 85. Those marks now wouldn't even take you to nationals. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How long ago was that, Brady?
So, oh man, it's 2024. So, 13 and 14 years ago. So,
Mm. Okay.
yeah.
So then what were when you knew about it, I've told this story before, and I'm sure if anybody's listened to all the podcasts, they're like, okay, you've told that one before. But I remember my own journey starting towards the Olympic trials, and I feel that little bit of kinship there. Like you said, there's a lot of people that wanted to do that. And then, I never even made it to a trials. I had the Olympics route here in 84. I jumped 7.2 as a sophomore at UCLA, and the trial height was only 7.4 and a quarter at that time. So
Mm.
it was like, and it was not on my radar to start that year because I hadn't even jumped 7 feet before that year came up. So when I went 7 feet and then 7.2, somebody said to me, hey, the Olympic trial height's like 7.4. I was like, oh, really? So I took like a couple shots at it late in the season, and then it was like, yeah, I just wasn't anywhere near ready to step up to that level. It's kind of like, but it did awaken in me that idea. So 88 when I was 24, and 92 when I was 28, I took some shots to try to get to the trials, but the trial height kept going up. So it went from
Yeah.
4.25 to 5.25, then went to 5.75. I'm like, man, I think now it's even higher. So it's just crazy. And but I remember that whole, you know, realization that you're right there, you're on the cusp, and you're training like you said, and you go for it. I did that my senior year. I trained like crazy and ended up with patellar tendonitis in both my knees, from too much plyos, and so yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there. So that would have been 2011, if I'm getting my math right, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So 2010, I went 5,000. 2011, I went just shy of 68. And, man, like, yeah, I mean, it was at the time, I think 7,300 was going to
Yeah.
like trials and USA championships. I was also inspired, like, so I had before I'd left high school, I'd high jumped 6'4" indoors.
Hmm.
And so there was a guy years later, his name's Mike Morgan. So he would go to UB, be an All-American. I think he might have even placed fourth at like a USA championship. He would shatter my record. Like I
Hmm.
remember my dad is a New York state official. He's like, hey, this guy Mike Morgan from your school, he's really good. And so I saw him go on. Like he actually jumped like I think it was like 6'10", 6'11". And
Wow.
I know, right? Like, it's like mine was just like a cliff note. It was a stepping stone, which I mean
Right.
that's what records are for, right?
Right.
But seeing him go, I was just like, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm a better athlete than him. I was like inspired by a younger person that was just like, hey, not many people from my high school go on to really do much, leave the state, let alone, do these things. So it's like, oh,
Right.
man, how amazing would it be to have two people, at that meet outside of my own personal goals of wanting to go
Right.
there. But ironically, like when I tell people or when they ask me like about track, it's like track was never really the first thing that I loved. So like I was picking up things and I was falling in love with the sport and with athletes, figuratively in a way that was just very late bloomer. So I felt like I had a lot more and um, and then it's tough. It's tough after, to pay your debts and to
Yeah.
train and yeah.
It's not set up here. We've talked about this before on the podcast with a lot of different athletes about, I just had Dontavius Hill was on last week, and we were talking about there's really no roadmap for the athletes once they get out of college. It's a real smorgasbord. I mean, he's I think he said a 5-time All-American, both indoor and out, and he's done 7.4 1/2, 224, whatever that comes out to be. I can't remember, 4 1/4. And he's had some success, and he told me he was turning pro. And I remember thinking in my mind, turning pro is like, man, there's somebody paying you, you've got money coming, and it's like he was like talking about, well, he's hoping to become that,
Yep.
and he's even made some travel teams and gone over, Bahamas and, different things like that. And I'm like, well, these are great experiences. And at the same time, man, it is just tough out there because I said, well, where do you train now? Are you still hanging out at the school? Because he went to Auburn, and he said he'd moved to Georgia and he was doing something different. And, I said, yeah, I remember that. I remember when I got hurt at UCLA, I rolled my ankle one time playing basketball, which of course we weren't supposed to do. And I went hopping on my good leg into the training room, and they go, "What'd you do?" And I'm like, "I rolled it," and they're like, "Okay." And I hopped over to the ice whirlpool, they stuck
Mm,
me in there for 20 minutes, and then they taped me up real good, and they had me doing my toe exercises right away. And like I was back like in 3 days from rolling my
yeah.
ankle. It wasn't. I had pretty strong ankles, but still, it wanted to balloon up, I'm sure, but it never even got a chance, right? And so this is a small side story on the hazards of all this stuff. But I remember in 92 when I was training, I I did something that I never do. I don't know why that I even did it. Like to this day, I've changed my coaching on it. I don't let my kids do run throughs and run under the bar and go
Mm,
into the pit because I ran under the bar and I caught a spike and I took an awkward step. And when I rolled my ankle, I rolled my ankle big time. And it was like, we're like 2 months away. And I wasn't training that well, even though I was training for the trials. I had a new coach and it was an old dog, new trick kind of thing because I was
yep.
28 and I just wasn't picking things up, and it wasn't a great season, but that was pretty much it. When I rolled my ankle that bad, because I mean, I hobbled home, there was no training room there, and I
Yeah.
had to cobble some ice together and I iced it down. And I was coaching at Orange Coast College at the time, and we had state finals the next day. And so I'm like, okay, I wrapped it up as good as I could and I iced it as well as I could most of the night. And it was feeling okay the next day. Well, we got on a plane to fly up to Shasta College for this meet. And I don't know if you know how this works, but when we started getting up in the air, when the altitude got above 30,000 feet, my ankle
Yep.
started to balloon out. I mean, it got 3 times its normal size. I could feel my sock stretching. I'm like, what in the hell is that? And it was like, oh my gosh, that was it. That was
Yep.
like the death move right there because I didn't have crutches. I had nothing. I was like, and we were at a meet for like 3 days. I
Yep.
immediately had to start walking around, and I'm like, oh, this is just couldn't believe it. So anyway, yeah, the way to survive, it's so difficult because I think the system is set up a lot like, in some ways, I'm surprised, like football and baseball and basketball. Well, more football and basketball, where the stars are kind of trained for free at the
Yep.
colleges. And then the pros come along and say, okay, we'll take you and you go right into being a pro. There's no, now there are those people that start hanging around the fringes and going to camps and, as free agents and doing that kind of stuff, right? And they can
Mm,
eventually find their way onto practice squads and, enough people get hurt, they get elevated,
yep.
it works out. But there's an awful lot of people that, don't persevere that long, because everything's so crazy. So you got close to 7,000. You said, what was the Olympic trial? point total that you were shooting for at that time?
Well, so there was at that time there was still the A and the B. So I think so the A had to have been like 8,000. And the B, I believe, was somewhere around like 73, 74. So it's funny you bring up an injury. Like, so I had done a deck my first year post collegiately, and I scored like 6,400 points, and I was terribly slow. I had some good, impressive marks, big PRs in some events I didn't see coming, and uh, had a tune-up meet at Slippery Rock. So I actually stayed in Slippery Rock because if I was a volunteer, then I could use all the resources. And I had a really good relationship with the athletic trainers there.
Nice.
And so I went out to a meet and knew what I needed to do to just go over 7,000. And the week before, I did a tune-up meet at Slippery Rock, and I like shattered some of my expectations. Like I had like the hurdles, I just needed to drop 2/10, which was realistic. I had dropped a half a second, and I was like,
Wow.
oh, like yeah. I mean, it's great to know that you have that wiggle room. So
Right.
I go out, I do the first event, the 100, and like I said, I ran terribly slow. I ran 11, like 11:8, 80, something like that. I wasn't particularly fast. Um, I went into the first meet or the first event. I was like, I just need to run 11:60 to get to 7,000. And I ran 11:40, and I was like, oh, okay. Like my PR was 11:35. Um, I was like, I'm in a good place. I go to long jump. I was like, all I had to do is jump like 6 meters. And, you know, there goes my ankle in the pit. Find out years later, I had an avulsion fracture.
Mm.
So if you're not familiar with that is where like a piece of the bone just pops
Yeah.
off that's
Yeah.
connected to the ligaments. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it was definitely crazy. Unfortunate, and I had plenty of those type of moments, but realistically those moments kind of pushed me in the direction of coaching. So
Yeah.
um yeah, but I mean the goal was uh it was always to just get better, because ultimately that's the only way you can get to those big goals. You
Right.
can't just say,
Right.
oh, I want to go 8,000
Sure.
when you score 65. And that's what, 1,500 points. That's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a
That's a
lot
lot
of
of
ground to
points.
make up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Spread over 10 events. Yeah. You don't think of
yeah,
it as a lot until you break it down, like you said, and then, you know,
yeah.
well, this now. Let's talk this for the listeners if you're not familiar. I had the great. I think about my life, and I go. I was really lucky to be at UCLA. I got to meet and watch train some of the best athletes. I got to meet and watch teach some of the best coaches in the world. I'm convinced Anthony Kern's one of the best pole vault coaches I've ever seen. His record speaks for itself. There's all kinds of what happened? What happened? Where
You
am
still
I?
got me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. You just disappeared from my screen.
Oh,
Let me hang on just a second. I started to panic. Okay. I don't know why that happened. I must have nudged something. Okay, my Chrome came up. I was like, where'd he go? Um, anyway, Curran in the pole vault, Art Venegas, who worked with John Brenner, who was just on the cusp of being an Olympian, was, NC2A champ and had one of the best throws in the world in 84 up to that time. And so Art had a long line of great, throwers. And then the great John Smith, just got to see, shout out to John, just saw him this last weekend. We had a big reunion at UCLA at Bob Larson's 85th birthday party. So that was fun. But John Smith just cranked out Olympians and gold
yep.
medalists, like going out of style. And I was really fortunate to be there right as he was kind of starting his career, but his career didn't waste much time getting going. Within a couple of years, he had already built amazing athletes. And so, I always had my ears open. Like you said, I didn't realize I was in future coach mode because I was currently at that time was all about me mode. It was like, I wanted to learn how to get faster. I wanted to learn how to lift more explosively, like the crazy I don't know about your weightlifters, but our weightlifters were crazy. The stuff that they did, we were just like amazed. I tell the story sometimes. We went to Bruin Bowl. Do you guys have a bowling alley on your campus?
Not on our campus, but we have a couple that are outside.
Close by. We
Yep.
actually have one at the student union. So I was hanging out with the guys. We went out eating a couple of times. That was always fun. It was competitive eating, by the way. And then we went to bowl, and these guys, they didn't just bowl. Like the score was irrelevant. This is the funniest thing. These guys, they wanted to throw the ball so hard that it would explode all the pins into the back wall. Like if that happened when they were watching, it was like they jumping around. If you got a strike where the pins just wobbled and fell over, that wasn't any fun. It was like you just had to destroy the pins into the wall. I've never seen a bowling ball move that fast in my life. They did what they called the hop and pop. It was really funny, but so anyway, great coaches, great athletes, and you get that like you're saying, those little nudges along the way. You learn some things that you can apply. You were talking about channeling the coach that you really respected, and wanted to, give the stuff that he taught you to others. And I have that same thing. I tell my kids all the time, I try to imitate my little Baru Elias, because he was my jump coach. He was coached at Long Beach City College, and he's this little Romanian guy, probably 5 feet tall, loafers, black socks, specs. And he'd be like, "You must come beat the guy. I am the great athlete. You must learn from me." And we're like, "Elias, you're 5 feet tall, man. You never jumped over anything. Who are you kidding?" But he created 278 high jumpers.
Wow.
He created routinely 26, 27-foot long jumpers, 50-foot something triple jumpers. And this is the junior college level. And the only reason nobody knew about him was nobody knew about him. He was just this little guy that hung out. But at Long Beach City College in Southern California, they were winning state titles. Like they went on a run. It was just pretty unprecedented, where they just destroyed everybody. And Elias had a big part to do with that, because it wasn't usually just one guy. He'd have stables of guys doing all this stuff. So I channel him whenever I can. And I always think of, you said the snatch of one of the lines of Yoda, which was, what was it, do or do not, at the very
Yeah.
beginning? He said it's kind of binary. You either do or do not. It's like,
Yep.
I use that one all the time. It's like do or do not. When a kid says they'll try, say, "I
Yep.
want you to do this." They say, "I'll try." I said, "No, no, no. Do or do not. There is no try." And my ears drop. I look and sound just like Yoda. But I hear Elias. So I'm channeling Elias through there, because I preach cycling. He was just like, everything was about cycling when you run, cycle when you jump.
Yep.
So I see cycling in just about every event where it applies, when you're running towards something that's an explosive, release of power. So, all right, let's talk turkey now. So
Okay.
you've been coaching the multis and everything there for how many years now at
So I'm going on, I believe, year 6.
okay.
Time flies. Our strength coach, one of my mentors, says, act your spirit, not your age. So, um, I've been here long enough to see my first recruiting class graduate. Yeah. So year 6.
Mm-hmm. And then so this college here is Pennsylvania, California College of Pennsylvania. How does it work?
So we've been known as many things. And this, like during the pandemic, they decide to integrate some schools, not merge, but integrate them to help each other out. So originally, our university had been known as California University of Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
Um, and now we're paired up with 2 other universities to save a little bit of money, to give students more affordable opportunity with more options as far as classes. And so now they named us uh, Penn West California. So
Okay.
Penn West University of California is what we call them. So,
Okay.
but we share the same name, but we're not the same mascot. We retain our same colors. So,
Right.
uh, but yeah.
Okay. And so what is how did you get, going there? Came back, obviously you stayed local inside the state where you grew up, and you competed in that. Is that in the same conference and same
Yeah.
rival school, like you said, right down the
Yeah.
street?
Yeah, so actually, so we're in Steeler country. So before James Harrison had retired, he had played at multiple teams that had some conflict with the Steelers. And so one of my best friends is like, "Dude, you're like the James Harrison of our conference." I was like, "Good, man." I'm like, somebody scary you don't want to deal with. You want me on your team.
Right.
I volunteered for 3 years at Slippery Rock. I had a great opportunity to continue education at St. Francis, which is in Loretto, Pennsylvania. It's a smaller Division 1 that houses about 1,500 students. on campus. I worked with some amazing people there, had some great opportunities. Respect to Douglas Hoover, who's still coaching there and doing really good things. After I graduated, I ended up getting a job at Kutztown University, which is just south of Allentown. So it's also in our conference, ironically.
Right.
There was a coach there who retired for health purposes. And so I was an emergency hire mid-year, had some success there, was hired full-time indefinitely thereafter. And, the guy that helped me get that job outside of the guy that hired me was Coach Daniel Caulfield. So he's the head coach here. He was a 146 800 runner, Division II national champ. Yeah, he ran at Adams State. So he's probably going to hate me for saying this, but he was at Adams when they perfect scored. He was not on that team, and I'll just leave the story at that. But he helped me get that job, and then saw some of the great things that we were doing, saw how I treated the athletes that I coached. Knew I was the type of guy that he wanted on his staff, and he offered me a position. And so I was dating the assistant coach here at the time. We're now married. We actually just welcomed our firstborn in December.
Congratulations, Coach. It's awesome.
Thank you. You would have never guessed, right? Like, I look wide awake and everything.
I was gonna say, are you getting any sleep?
Oh, plenty. He loves his sleep like I love my sleep. So that's
awesome.
the athlete, right?
There you go.
But yeah, so I got hired here, and my wife is a phenomenal coach. She coaches the sprints and the hurdles. She's actually currently working with two what we would call them semi-professionals.
Right.
People
Olympic
running
trial
at the
hopefuls.
Yeah, I mean, so the one girl she coached, a woman, Devon Franklin. Both of them, they actually I wanted to take a quick moment, if you don't mind, shout out to Garden State Track Club, a group in New Jersey that are trying to help people that were in the situation that you and I were in, to give them opportunities and resources. And so Devon Franklin is our most recent grad. She was NCAA top 30 women, top 10 all NCAA. She graduated last year. She won the sprint double outdoors. She ran 11:09 in the 100, and she ran, I think it was like 22:65 in the 200. And
11:09 in the 100's fast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you watch the race, I didn't think she won it, to be honest. And now she's also coaching another guy who graduated back in 2019. He actually just was in Albuquerque at the New Mexico Collegiate Classic and ran 676, which is just shy, 0.01 off of the USA Championships, and ran 20 point. Oh, I watched it, 20 point like 80 something, which is a lifetime PR.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for Garden State, those opportunities wouldn't have been there. Div is still doing amazing things, training a little bit more lucidly for like the 400 to range a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, that's why I'll be honest. I came here for personal reasons, and I love the personal and the professional growth I've had with all the staff here. Anybody that I interact with on campus, our athletic director, fantastic people. So I've never been I've never wanted to leave since I've gotten here. Not that won't happen at some point in life, but yeah, I'm happy.
Hey, can you give me like 5 minutes? I just spilled that thing that I was drinking from.
No worries.
I gotta do a quick cleanup. So
You're good.
All right. Thanks. I'll edit later, but okay.
No worries.
Yeah, I've been drinking from that bottle and I bounced it. Bad timing.
Yeah, it happens. There's no worries.
Well, I put everything on CapCut, so I'm becoming pretty good at going through and editing out the stuff that happens, because there's always something. Always something. But that's new. I've never spilled anything in the middle of a podcast before. Becoming an old pro. I need to go to podcast school, and I've been watching, more and more of the big podcast type stuff on, YouTube. So I follow Colin Cowherd, and, my Niners, like your Steelers, are everybody's bagging on Brock Purdy every 5 minutes. So I've got all kinds of stuff to watch on these different shows.
Yeah.
And, they're both radio and podcast kind of all at the same time, and they've also got the video. So I'm like, but of course they have all the stuff that I don't, which is like graphics and you know graphics and video clips and stuff like that that I don't know how to do that. I would actually love to do it. Now that I'm doing this, I wish I had done something different with my education. And no, I don't regret what I did with my education because it was kinesiology and biomechanics and all that stuff, which like I said at the time, I took it because I wanted to be a great athlete.
Yeah.
And it's instead fueled my coaching. But I see now I'm also part sports psychologist, as you yourself are, and I'm also part getting into the communication side of it, to promote. I mean, I shamelessly try to promote, and I think what we're lacking in the country as far as track and field goes with getting these athletes. So you're talking about the shout out before to these athletes that are just out of college and trying to find their way. I mean, huge untapped potential, but the problem is, and I keep coming down to the brass tacks of it, is like track and field just doesn't get enough exposure. Once every 4 years we get a big shot in the arm from the Olympics, but the older people like myself that have any real historical knowledge and background, you have to kind of work for now. I'm sure the kids nowadays, it's just like some of the young kids, you say, oh man, you look just like Jordan, and they're like, Jordan who? Basketball. Like, who's Michael Jordan? Oh, you look like Joe Montana. They did that commercial where Joe Montana's in some bar and the guy goes, they're talking about when goes, hey man, you were great, Joe. And the guy goes, looks at me, goes, would you play tennis or something? It's like, dude, that's Joe Montana. He's got 4 Super Bowl rings. It was like, Joe who? And it's like Carl Lewis, 1984 wins 4 golds. Who's that? It's like they probably have forgotten who Usain Bolt is, and it's only been a few years. So, it's a short attention span, and dominated obviously by the 100 meters and a few other events. They just don't show the stuff that I'm interested in seeing, that you're interested as a decathlete. I would love to see it, and it's too bad because the Americans, we used to dominate the decathlon for years. It was an American event. Then when I was growing up through college, it was Daley Thompson of Great Britain going against Jürgen Hinkson, the 6'7" West German guy. And then, we had the 1 year with the Dan and Dave, Dan O'Brien, was it, and Dave Johnson, I think those two.
Yeah.
I
actually have his book.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And Dan O'Brien no-hided in the pole vault, right? Which kind of ruined the whole thing. And that's late, right? Is that midway through the second day when he did that?
What, the pole vault?
No height in the pole vault?
Yeah. It's like it's kind of the worst point, or it's the worst time it's like no height, it's like no marking in the 400. You're like,
there's a lot of points.
What do I do?
Right?
I just got the engine running, and should I
there's just no way to make it up? I mean, it's that substantial of a point loss?
Man, like 0 points in an event is, unless you're like
PRing and everything,
but unless you're like 1,000 points of everybody else, that could be the end.
And it's never usually like that, not at that level, right? So anyway, it's the track and field, what I keep seeing is just need to find a way to package up the product. Package up. There's so many great athletes that I don't think people understand, because they do and they don't. But it's like, number one, we have a huge country. It's a huge country where we have 50 different states. They're like their own little countries. So like I've been following on my feed, from Instagram, and I've lost track of how many kids that are state champs in their respective states that I've shown their jumps. I get them to tell their story. Like, hi, I'm Maddie Buxton from, Virginia, and I've jumped 5'6" this year, and I was, 3A state champ, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's awesome. There's tons of them like that. And they're going on to college. Then they go through the mill. And then, what happens after that? And it's like, but there's no real publicity, you know, and
Yeah.
from watching the meets, you know, the way they do it still, it's antiquated at best. I'm like, I keep waiting for someone to, we need someone that has like that football, like big time football, you know, where they have 50 cameras in the truck and they got that one guy that's like, okay, cut camera one and go to camera three, you know, and oh, let's go over here to the pole vault and let's go over here, you know, and because talk about a sport that has so much going on, you know, and it's like if you could get anybody, you have to have somebody who's fluid enough to just move. It's like football is always on the move. So is basketball, but then you got, you know, football is a pretty big field. Basketball is a relatively small area. Golf, I mean, golf has got to be one of the most boring, hate dry watching thing ever created. But if you're watching the Masters and they've got great leaderboard and just this beautiful area and they really have it down, and then they're going to show you anything of consequence. Like if guy could be 15 shots out of the lead, and if he hits a hole in one on 16 over the water, you're going to see
Yep.
it. You're going to see it the second he does it, you know, and it's like they're going to replay it and they're going to bring up the guys in the past that did that. And it's just like, if you could make golf interesting with the guy in the truck, and then, you know, they do have cameras on every hole. You know, I
Yep.
remember when I was a kid, when I was watching, you didn't see the front nine at Augusta on Sunday. You only saw the back nine, like the famous Jack Nicklaus charge where he shot 29 on the back to win. Never saw the front nine. I don't know what he shot. You know, it didn't even matter. Now they show you every hole on that course, you know, because
Yep.
they know the people are starving for it. So I'm just like, we need to get that same mentality, you know, out of someone that's just like, hey, we have got some of the best athletes in the world doing amazing things. And it's all over the place. It's like a three-ring circus. And it's not really organized. That's the other problem. I don't even know how you would do it. How would you organize a meet for TV and not the other way around?
So I think so. I have my degrees are in business
Mm-hmm.
and marketing, and I like to think that I use them. I actually help out with our Instagram account, so I do all the graphics for that pretty much, and
Mm-hmm.
we try to do stuff just to do exactly what you're talking about. Like before this, I think I dropped like 30 posts on our story, and it was like, here's the people that competed at New Mexico or person. Here's the people that competed at Boston. Here's the people that
Right.
were at Denison University, and then here are the updates on our all-time lists. And it takes a lot. I think
Mm-hmm.
if you were to do it with a with like broadcast, I think respectfully it would almost make sense to find a way to almost like have the screen like this, and it's like all the active events are going on, and then you just drag them in. You have them always playing, no different if you're
Right.
looking at a live stream.
Like the
But
red zone
yeah.
TV for NFL, right? Where
Yeah.
instead of them going, oh, we're going to these guys because they're on the 20, you
Oh
could
yeah.
literally pick the screen that you wanted to go to. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep. I think that would be probably I don't know that'd be the best thing, but it would probably be a nice step in a direction to figure out some better ideas.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I keep thinking, well, see the problem with meets, it's both the draw and the problem in that there's just so much going on. Like we said, it's hard to get one thing down. So you either
Yep.
have to be really good at bouncing around, which I still think they could do a much better job of it. I still complain to this day. They sent the camera crew out in 1986, my senior at UCLA. They go, hey, we're getting prime ticket, which turned into, I forget which other big network out here. I don't think it's a Fox affiliate, but it's something like that. They're still out here. And they go, yeah, we're going to film your meet against Cal in the rain. And Cal comes down here and brings their weather with them. It's cold and wet. And we'd seen the camera setting up and we were so excited. We're like, oh my God, we're going to be on TV. And so we win the meet in the rain when we all get together. I don't think we all got together, but a lot of us got together and we're sitting somewhere where there were TVs and we're waiting, and here it is, Pac 12 or Pac 10 at that time. And it's UCLA Cal. And, they didn't have anything that sophisticated to, beef it up. But then, they start showing the events and all they did was they filmed every single running event.
Yep.
And they did not cover the field events at all. It was like, I don't remember seeing anything, not even a graphic, not even like at least first, second, and third. And the high jump was because we happened to sweep the high jump that day. And I was lucky enough to win it. And Mike Powell, who's the world record holder in the long jump, came over and high jumped with us. he never practiced. He jumped 7'1" in high school. He wouldn't even practice. He would just come over and jump. And he came in second. And my good friend Brian Mergenthal took third that day. And their coach actually said in the paper that if anybody was going to sweep the high jump, it was going to be them. And so that was pretty cool. And we were just all amped up and waiting, and no high jump, no long jump, no shot disc, nothing. And then, every lap of the 10,000. So or the 5 or whatever. And you're just like, oh man. And it just seems like it's been the same, forever. And I'm like a showman now. I'm thinking like, I've seen on my feed those featured events where they have the high jump and they just corner off a little part of the stadium, and I've seen Barshim and some of those big, names, and they're just like, it's a high jump only kind of festival, and I'm like, I would love to get, something like that. I've even started thinking about trying to do it indoors, even a high school slash, I don't know if it could be high school and college and even attract elites. I need to find a place that has a really good wood floor, like, an outrageous gym floor. I'm sure you can dunk, having jumped at least 6'4". Did you get higher than 6'4" when you were a decathlete?
Me? Oh yeah, I jumped 6'6". That was my PR in college.
6'6".
Yep.
So sure you could dunk, and you've been on floors that were better than other floors, where you were like, oh
Yep.
my gosh. I know we went one time and played intramural ball down at Poly Pavilion, UCLA, and that floor was amazing. I was just like going, oh man, I could see jumping, indoors here, but my experience indoors was terrible because out here on the coast, all we ever had was wood floors. So you run on wood floors with spikes trying to jump. It was terrible. I keep seeing these feeds of kids that are jumping in their tennis shoes, indoors off basketball floors, or they may have an indoor surface, and they're wearing their spikes or whatnot. But I'm like, I just kind of want to do a basketball, high jump, indoor, good floor, and promote it, which I have no skills in that area. I need to start networking. All right.
Hey,
So as you're going through this year now, who are your
yep.
studs that you're really working with, and who are you excited that you think can be, championship type athletes?
Well, my first shout out's going to be to I coach a girl by the name of Beyonce Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
She's a multiple time state champ from Maryland. She's finishing up her career here. Last year she was third at the NCAA championships outdoors. She jumped 5. Her PR is 5'9.25". You know how it goes. She nipped 5'11.25"
Yeah.
last year a couple times. Absolutely love her. She's great to watch. She's a beautiful high jumper, and she stands at a height of 5'4".
Awesome.
Kind of like an Inca McPherson.
Right.
So she's always she's actually the one that I was out in Albuquerque with this last like couple days. She's fantastic. I also coach a young man right now. He's a dual sport athlete, so he's football and he's track. And I got very fortunate. That was what he wanted to do. He didn't want to just do one or the other, and he almost jumped to 11 from 5 total steps.
Wow.
So yeah, a little bit of disconnect between the full and the 5, but I'm a smart enough coach to know you go with a hot hand, and if he can jump just as high or higher at the moment from 5, that's what we do. And
Yeah.
I have a couple young ladies in the triple jump that are fantastic. Um, I have one who I hope she doesn't see this, not because she would hate to hear what I'm saying, but she's the most humble person that I know, and she doesn't even know how great she is and how great she can be. She just jumped, I think it was like 37 from 12 total steps in triple.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have a couple others. Like I love working with people that just grind it out and work. And I can't say that I don't have a bunch of studs with me. They're not all like NCAA All Americans, but
Right.
in their own right, they're all awesome. They're all studs.
Yeah.
So
That's an interesting thing that you bring up, and I think probably more true for your discipline than almost any other, right? Where you really kind of need to be a blue collar guy. They're going to be those guys. We all hate them from the time that we're kids. I remember in 7th grade, there's this kid named Barry that in 7th grade already had a full beard. you know, and like I didn't have any hair anywhere, just on the top of my head. That was it. And I'm just like going, wow, who is this guy? You know, and I don't even remember him as an athlete. But then, you know, there's always those guys that developed quicker, you know, and they were awesome earlier, and then there's always the guys that were so talented. And in practice, they were terrible. They were lazy. They didn't want to run. They didn't want to go full speed. They didn't want to do anything the coaches asked them to do. And when it came to game time, they were so good that it almost didn't matter. And you felt like,
Yeah.
you know, having become a coach now, I know that that's a tough place to be in when you really need that guy to win. And at the
Yep.
same time, you're like, he sets a terrible example for everybody else because he just doesn't have any discipline, you know. And you're like, and they don't realize that if they worked harder, they would be even better than they are. But since they're better than everybody else anyway, they don't see the point. And you can kind of see that too. So like, man, you know, but what is the point of the whole argument is that work ethic that you're talking about, that grinder mentality, that blue collar, you know, work ethic is kind of, like you said, required in the decathlon, even though my brain has broken it down and said, okay, let's make the decathlon all about speed. You know,
Yeah.
where would speed be useful? Well, it's 100. You got the
It's
four,
everything.
right? You got long jump, you got high
Yep.
jump, javelin, pole vault. So there's 6. Hurdles is 7, right? And now after that, you've got shot, disc, jab. So I'd probably put one extra one in there. I think I came up with more than 10. But if you get, what was the one? It is 100, 416, right? 3 different,
1500.
just 15.
Yeah.
So no 400. So
Oh
100,
no, there's a 400. It's a 100.
oh yeah, 4,
It's
15,
400.
not
The
16,
110s. It's 1500.
1500. But there's hurdles too.
Yep. 110s. Yeah.
So that's 4 different running races,
Yep.
high, long, and
Yep. Pole vault.
pole vault, and then shot, disc, jav.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
You
Javelin
got
I
them.
might have left out. Javelin is also speed. For me, I
Yep.
think speed, but I know that there are people that in all these events, there are guys that don't run that fast and are just powerful, explosive, right? You
Yep.
can just cruise up there and throw the jab 250 or something, right? And then I watched this kid yesterday at this meet at Arcadia. We did Arcadia is a big high school invite out here in April, but they do an earlier winter championships version where all the qualifying hearts are a little lower. Nobody's really in shape yet. And this one kid jumped 6'9" yesterday, and he'd had no approach. I mean, you
Yep.
talk about your guy from 5. I think he was taking 8 steps, but they were basically 4 or 5 walking and like 2 or 3 quick little steps. And then he just sat over. He sat over everything, but he opened at 6'2" or 4 or something. Just like he made everything until 6. He made 6'9" on his first and took it, you know, a good jump at 6'10". And I remember watching it just going, I don't think I've ever seen anybody jump that slow and still just explode over stuff. But at the elite levels, right? Let's say I know that the calling card for Dan O'Brien was that he was really, really fast.
Yeah.
So that he was a good pole vaulter, he was a good sprinter, a good long jumper, right? Good hurdler. And then the guy that won the Olympics in 2021 from Canada, he was breaking records left and right? He broke the 100-meter record for
Yep.
the decathlon, right? And he was a good hurdler. He had a great pole vault day. I remember watching him, and I'm like, well, this guy's just fast. Everything that involves speed, he's gonna be good at. And I'm like, well, isn't that almost all of them? I'm like, so
Yep.
you know, even you know when you watch Brian Krauser throw the shot, I start thinking speed more than
Yep.
power because he's getting through the ring fast. You know, I grew up watching all glides. So when I was at UCLA, John Brenner was throwing 72 feet gliding. And now everything's changed. You know, you don't see any gliders anymore. Everybody's getting both the rotational and the translational speed through the ring, right? So
Yep.
I see it both shot and disc, obviously, but the disc has always been that way. So what do you do with that? How do you train? This is getting more technical, but how are you trying to get all your athletes to be fast in the jump?
Well, I
Yeah.
do want to take a quick second. I should have added 2 more in. Shame on me for neglecting the multis. I have 2 fantastic women, one of which is a transfer. She's got crazy goals and I love it. But she came in with a score of like 3,200 and she's already over 34 with
Mhm.
goals of going to nationals, being a 38-point heptathlete or pentathlete here this year. So,
Right.
you know, and that's a common battle. I mean, we're definitely a speed-based program. But mostly what we do is we emphasize on, teaching proper mechanics, which, most coaches, talk about. And we do a lot of plyometrics. So, in all fairness, I am a jumps coach. However, I do consider myself a plyometric consultant to the sprinters and the hurdlers. So I consult with both Jalen Means and Devon Franklin, the two that my wife coach post collegiately currently, and she does the same thing for me. She's a speed consultant for all the athletes that I coach. So, we've had some people like we had a freshman one year. He had a PR of 22 foot. He jumped 23.6, 3 meets.
Wow.
And so we're definitely a program where we line up, and I take a little bit of what Kip Jambrin does at University of Central Missouri, who was a well-known decathlete. I believe he has a plaque at Drake University at the Drake Relays, and he patterns his days out no different than what I learned from Lauren Seagrave, which is fast and then a little bit slow. We do a rest day, then we do fast, then we go a little slow, but not like go out for a 5-mile run or anything. Everything we do, including our warm-up, promotes proper mechanics. So we actually ditch the, hey, take a lap, take 2 laps. Our cool downs don't even consist of, any type of running that goes out past, I want to say like 10 seconds. So we're not expecting the sprint all the time. And I think that's the most important thing that I convey. But ultimately, I mean, if you're wanting your athlete to have proper speed mechanics and forward locomotion movements, then why would you send them out on a run that practices that of shuffling or jogging,
right,
when you really want them to be activating the knees to get them high and to do that? And so that's been basically the foundation of what we do here. And ultimately, I mean, people, if they follow the plan, if they're open to listening to making lifestyle choices and, being sharp on the days that we have, those days that we need to be sharp, they get better,
Yeah.
So, but there's always those outliers, right? Like those people that don't, but it's, it's a piece, but that's what we do. I mean, we know that there's a good balance, and, you can be fast or you can be quick, but that doesn't mean you're fast. So ultimately it comes down really to the individual. I mean, our team isn't massive, which is nice. Our practice groups are small, so we can actually give a little bit more attention. And make sure that we don't, overprescribe or even like put somebody in a group and say, oh, this is the type of runner you are, and you need to emphasize this more than the other.
Right.
So
a couple of questions related there. First off, have you heard of Coach Tony Holler? Have you heard any of his stuff?
I don't believe I have.
He's his philosophy kind of sounds like yours, and mine is a version of both of yours. That's his philosophy is called Feed the Cats, and we had a podcast. It's coming up on a year now. He's actually going to be out here in Irvine, and he charges too much to go to his seminar. So I'm like, okay, I got to listen to what he said on my podcast again because I can't afford the seminar. But his philosophy is he doesn't have his guys run anything more than 150 meters. So even the 100, 200, and 400 guys, they don't tend to do anything more than that. But it's all about speed with him. So he has ways of measuring speed, and then the philosophy is they run as fast as they can, like you said, and then they recover, and they don't run when they can't run as fast as they can. So when he explained it to me, I was thinking of like the big cats when they hunt. They find something and they make their move and they chase it down, right? And they either get it or they don't. But either way, when they're done, they're done. like cheetahs will sit and hyperventilate for like an hour before they go again because they ran 70 miles an hour, and the metabolic cost is amazing. And so they don't just turn right around and go, oh, yeah, I'll give you another rep. There's like, no, we're going to recover for a while here. So, for years, I thought that for high jump, especially, and I'm a high jump specialist, I do the other jumps in the vault, but I'm like, and I know if I have a long jumper, high jumper, or a long jump, triple jump guy, that they need to run more than my high jumpers. But for my high jumpers, I want them to be fast. I just don't need to be able to run that far. They're not going to run I mean, 60, 70 feet for a lot of high jumpers is a full approach. That's 20 meters, 30, 25 meters tops. So why would I train them to run 100 meters fast when you're never going to
Yeah.
run that speed if you're coming up to the high jump? You might need that speed, but you're not going to run from that far away because you need to be accelerating through the takeoff. If you're decelerating or just maintaining, so you've got that issue. The other thing, so that's philosophical, and I always like to hear the take on that. So let's hear your ideas on that, whether you agree or not, and then I'll bring up the other thing that popped into my head.
So just real quick, what are you looking for again? Sorry.
Kind of just because you mentioned it, I was wondering if your thought on training with the speed day. You said a heavy day and then a light day, heavy day, light day. Is that kind of the same thing? Are we talking about the
Yeah,
same
kind of.
overall?
Well, I don't train, obviously, I don't train my high jumpers the way I do my long and triple jumpers and so on and so forth. But um, we, so usually a high intense day for us is followed by something that um, is not as intense, that will produce lactic acid, but will also increase carbon dioxide levels.
Mm-hmm.
So the carbon dioxide level one, I don't know if you've ever heard about that. But I'll give another shout out to a guy by the name of Aaron Davis. He's a friend of our head coach. I'd like to consider him a friend, but I don't have the same, connections with him. Does some amazing things out of San Antonio. I forget what his company is off the top of my head, and I apologize. But he talks about like carbon dioxide being a great recovery source for our central nervous system. So, obviously don't want my high jumpers to run like 400 workouts, but we do stuff that does increase carbon dioxide levels so that the central nervous system can recover without like the taxing tolls of the lactic acid, stuff like that. So we'll actually take an approach that Boo Chesnader talks about, and that's circuit training, cross training, things that are important. We like to do like sled pushes, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as what I have to remember with them is they want to feel light, right? Like a high jumper never want to feel heavy. Like
Sure.
they don't ever want to not feel like a spring.
Right.
So that's the big thing that I always consider. And it's like finding that level and going there, but just going back and forth between, a little bit of explosive and a little bit of recovery, and making sure we have at least one speed day in there where they're running fast, and
Mm-hmm.
remembering that they are athletes and that they're not slow jumpers.
Right.
When it comes to long and triple, we follow a similar pattern. But usually the day they do long or their full approach days is the day that we hit a little bit of max speed or a little bit of special endurance.
Yeah.
um but our sprinters, our hurdlers, they cover, and multis. I guess I'll just throw that out there. I say I took it, but I borrowed it or I use it.
Right.
It's something I learned from Kip. Is we run fast on Monday, not really short, but we run fast on Monday, acceleration, maybe max or a little bit of lactic acid. Tuesday, it's either lactic acid or it's some type of pace work to promote recovery.
Yeah.
Wednesday, rest, recovery, with some shot put. Thursday, fast again.
Yeah.
And then Friday, not as fast as Monday or Thursday, but not as slow as Tuesday. So it's just a nice little pattern. It's something that Lauren Seagrave had told me years ago, or I was at a USATF level 1 where he was talking, and he's like, rule of thumb is whatever you do the following day, it can be longer, but it has to be less intense. He's like,
Right.
as long as you don't go hard, unless
Yeah.
you're training somebody to go hard, because the meet requires it, but you
Right.
don't want to do that weekly unless you want
Sure.
fried athletes. So
Yeah, you're gonna break something eventually, right? So,
yeah. Yeah, but we love speed and we love plyos. I mean,
yeah.
it's just you have to pay attention when you play with that, right? Because no different than driving a fast car. You're either going to get in a wreck if you're not,
Yeah.
paying attention, or you're going to get a ticket. So,
Yeah.
we monitor and we communicate with the athletes we coach, and sometimes we prescribe less, or sometimes we pivot and we do something that is similar but still beneficial, but it's not the same impact.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that we still check some boxes when we need to just check them.
Okay. Yeah. So, pardon me. You brought up a couple things that I love, and I'm sure it might be a little bit too esoteric or too, deep. Or for some people, not too deep to understand, but too detailed. Or they're like, let's move along. But I've heard the CO2 thing, and my brain was like, okay, wait, what? And then
Hmm.
I heard lactic acid, which I understand,
Yep.
but from a real rudimentary point in that I know there's different types of workouts that, like you said, stimulate those, and then that tie into the CNS I find really interesting. So I want to delve into that, but I have to do a little research. The other question that popped into my head, Brady, was we've mentioned now speed, we've mentioned plyometrics, and
Hmm.
I'm sure there's some people out there going, do you need your athletes, your explosive athletes, to lift weights? And
Oh
when I
yeah.
ask that question, some people are going to laugh, and because maybe their guys lifted more. But all the time that I was in the weight room at UCLA, and I lived in the weight room because for the first 2 years I didn't have a jump coach, and the weight room was there, and it was like if you'd have seen my high school weight room and then seen the one at UCLA, you would just laugh yourself into a coma because we didn't have anything at Millikan High School, and this is a pretty good high school. We had some pretty good athletes coming out of there, but in early 1980s, that weight room was a joke. And when I walked into the one at UCLA, it was like, four sets of dumbbells from fives to 150s. And then there was like 12 power racks in this huge circle around the gym. And there was a complete line of Cybex equipment, and in the early 80s and still to this day, Cybex is one of the best I've seen. Everything was built, biomechanically with all these great angles and this and that. And I was walking there like this, like, oh my God, this place is great. Like I can do everything. And so I did everything, and it was of great benefit to me as a jumper, but I didn't see the sprinters in there that much, and I've seen sprinters that are jacked, big
Yep.
guns, and huge quads and everything else. I'm like, are they lifting in a different weight room, or do they just not lift, or what? So what is the relationship for you training your athletes between, the weights, and then how that pertains to kind of both speed and plyos, I guess?
Yeah. So, another one of my mentors is actually our strength and conditioning coach here. His name's Bobby Sapezi. Um, Life has been nothing but an evolution here for us. Um, it started out, we did functional movements. We'd have them in for 50 minutes, 60 minutes a day. Not forgetting that, you know, lifting is helpful, but it's supplemental
Mm-hmm.
to what we're doing. It
Right.
might be more fundamental, for certain events, like, throwing and stuff. But for a jumper, it is important for sure, but we use it as a supplemental sense. So where we're at now is we stick to the main squats and deadlifts, strict press, push jerk, easy easy Olympic lifts and explosive movements that take a short period of time to teach them. Because we're not getting the people, and most track and field athletes, let's be honest, like they think they know how to lift, but they really don't know how to lift, or they
Right.
know they don't know how to lift and they don't want to lift. So
Right.
we keep their attention span and we just make sure that we hit the movements that are important. But most importantly, we use VBT. So we do velocity based training. We use a box that registers like a lot of other people, especially like at the higher level. But we basically, at every testing cycle, we don't actually do 1 RMs anymore. Just a waste of time, waste of energy, waste of effort. We get theoretical ones. I know some programs that do that,
Uh-huh.
but what we do now is we look for or we create what's called a velocity profile. And so basically a max out, or a theoretical max out, we can figure out where their strengths and weaknesses lie. If they're an explosive athlete that needs to get stronger, or if they're a stronger athlete needs to get explosive. And so when they see their list for the day, the reps, the sets, they all pretty much run the same. However, the big difference is the speed of which they move the bar.
Right.
Um, the only thing that I will say that it took me a little bit to catch on to is when they start moving the bar faster, certain movements like squats, they're essentially counter jump movements. Now I have to program in consideration that whatever repetitions they did in the weight room account for the repetitions that I would prescribe that day at practice.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
so basically when we lift or when they lift, we do plyos. We don't always sprint on those days. We don't do fastings all the time on those days, but
Yeah.
basically that's what we do. I mean, the girl so actually let me double back to Devon Franklin. Speed is a dangerous thing. High school, she ran 12:77 and 27 mid. And just to refresh, like her PRs now are 11:09 and 22:65.
Yeah.
And I can tell you with confidence, zero major injuries,
Right.
nothing that took her out of competition. Besides the normal stuff, tight back or tight muscle here and there. But besides the fact that she was diligent on her recovery, but she was a typical college student.
Mhm.
She had to evolve and grow over time, as far as I know. But I mean, honestly, what we do here is, I mean, it's like the weight room is so valuable because it does keep them healthy. It does keep them safe, and very rarely do they come out of that weight room exhausted and tired and, sore unless they haven't
Yeah.
been doing anything for a while. So
Right.
it's a big part, that's the biggest thing. I just like to think that we do things not just different, but I like to try to think we're ahead.
Yeah. No, what you're saying makes sense. It's hard in everything, and this is a principle that runs. For those of you listening, again, we're here on Raise the Bar, and I'm talking with Brady Wert, who's the jumps and multis coach for California University at I messed it up again.
You just call it Cal U. We just go
Cal
there.
U. That's
That's
right.
Yep.
See, that's the hard part for me because we've got Cal Berkeley up here. So okay, so they
Well,
Cal
I'll
U
tell you.
in Pennsylvania, right? Um,
Yep.
and the principle that we're both nudging along here, and it comes up in all its various forms, is what I would call pyramiding or peaking, in that the base of your training program when you start on any of these things, speed, power, plyos, all of them, we tend to do more sets. Sorry, say for number's sake, squats, 5 sets of 8. I remember doing 5 sets of 8 during the summer, my senior year, when Bob Alejo, the strength guy at UCLA, said, "Here's your weight program." And then we transitioned from 5 sets of 8 to 5 sets of 5. The 5 sets of 8 was like 65% of your max. And then 5 sets of 5 was more like 75 or 80%. And then at the end, it might have been like 3 sets of 3 or a 3-2-1 or whatever, right? So as the intensity goes up, the number of sets and reps goes down.
Yep.
Same thing in plyos, right? You're doing explosive, super high plyos. You can't
Mhm.
do a lot of those. And I'm here to
Yep.
tell you, I did those my senior year because plyometrics in 1986 was a relatively new subject. Everybody's kind of like, oh man, these are great for you. And, there's all this research the Russians did and on and on and on. And like I said, my little guru, Elias, was having me go into the library and look up these Russian sports journals and read their stuff, right? And that was okay for me because I was a kinesiology guy. But anyway, sprinting, lifting, plyos, all of it is going that same pyramid. And
Yep.
even I would call it your specificity of movement, like you're talking about. Real general cross training type stuff at the beginning, and more and more and more and more like the actual event. So
Yep.
I see that principle both in sets and reps, and I see it also in the complexity of the movements. In that, like you're saying, I think at the beginning for me, I like them doing squats and deadlifts and lunges and step ups, for the single leg stuff. And then I'm trying to get them, like you said, I want to move that bar quick, but it doesn't have to be heavy. But then, and it's not going to be heavy when you start training more single leg stuff, right? At the end, I like to transition from the 2 to the 1, and even have them. I've seen a lot of the, European stuff where they're doing a one-legged clean or snatch, or it turns into a one-legged clean snatch into a lunge, right?
Mm.
Or doing that off a box and then catching, and all these movements, you're like, oh yeah, I see that as more athletic and less lifting, like you're talking about, because someone who's just doing a back squat, first of all, I go, okay, I love that lift. I got to
Mhm.
where I was squatting 400 my sophomore year. That's when I had my best year to date at that time. And I don't think I squatted more than 250 in high school. So, I got up to 400. All of a sudden I jumped 7.2. And I'm like, well, there's got to be a correlation to that. I'm a heck of a lot stronger than I was just a few years ago. So the problem with that is I had a hard time doing that all the time. I felt
Yep.
like I lifted really hard that year. And the next year, my junior year, I just didn't like the weight room that much. Like I kind of went in there and I'd look around like, do I really want to do this like this again? And it turns out I needed to. So I jumped 7-1 the first meet, and I never got over 7-2 my junior year. So I'm like, okay, it's kind of a necessary requirement. At the same time, I mean, squatting has nothing to do with high jumping in some real basic ways, in that you never use both legs at the same time. We don't do a 2-footed takeoff, it's a single leg. So I'm like, when I started seeing people doing Bulgarian, squats, I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of a little more specific, isn't it? And then do I even need to go that deep? Right? Do I need to
Yeah.
go all the way down there? Because you see high jumpers, when they lean back, that leg is straight at a 45-degree angle. And then if they get really good, their knee hardly bends at all. And they come right up and out of there. They're not going to be in a 90-degree angle. Now, it might be nice to have that power,
Yep.
if your joint is to bend that much. But yeah, it's amazing when you say that the lifting part, I think it's smart. I want to talk. We'll have to do another one of these and get back, but I want to learn about this velocity thing that you're talking about. I know there's new technologies all the time, and
Yeah.
any of you out there wondering why that is, sports, if nobody's paying attention, is a multi-billion or trillion-dollar industry, and even filtering down to track and field from what I say usually runs the show is the football program at most schools, because they make all the money from the TV contracts, right? And it kind of filters its way into the other programs, because most track teams that I know of, even at UCLA, were not self-sufficient. There's nobody. We, I mean, track and field has come way down since I used to watch films of the UCLA USC track meet at Drake Stadium. Ducky Drake was a famous coach back in the day, coached Olympians like Rayford Johnson and all these other guys. They've now named the track after Rayford, the stadium after Ducky. They were packed. USC UCLA dual meets packed, and on the IM field, the fences out to where the other people were out there exercising, 7 or 8 people deep, looking over each other, trying to see what's going on. When I was at UCLA, not only did we kill SC every dual meet that we went against them, but there was nobody there. It was friends and family only. It wasn't like the stadium was packed with students. You know, it's a rivalry against SC. It's like it just wasn't the same. So if you're not putting any butts in the seats or having people watch you on TV, where's the money coming from? Right? There's no money to fuel these programs. And here you're talking about expensive weight rooms and equipment and velocity trackers and all that kind of stuff. But it has gotten more sophisticated, simply because, again, the end result can be quite monetarily beneficial to many, not just the big sponsors. Well, Brady, dude, this has been awesome. I
Yeah.
love hearing your brain go through stuff. Other people may be getting bored with that with me, but I just am the guy that would just sit there and pick and ask questions and go, why do you do that? Why this? And I'm always looking to improve, my game, by adding what other people have done that they find success, and especially when it's well thought out and well implemented and safe. It gets you your results,
Yep.
and it has all the positives that go along with it. Congratulations again, young man, on being married, having your first kid. You guys planning for a couple more?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, it's obviously a big decision in general. Like when we both coach in the same office, I mean, we have a great support staff. I mean, besides the fact that our student athletes always want to babysit him, and we have
Right.
people in administration, like there'll definitely be a couple more in the future, but at a nice little steady rate. So we're really excited. Obviously to like have him around track and field and athletics. I think it's
Right.
just going to be awesome to share that with him as he grows up. Hopefully he doesn't hate it.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking the time and let me be a part of this. I do want to, at least, can I add one more thing?
Please do.
So one thing when it comes down to it, when it comes to our training, I always follow one principle of Kip Jameron's like philosophy is an athlete's better off undertrained and healthy than overtrained and hurt. So at the end of the day, as a coach, you have to always realize that, yeah, you have this great idea, this plan that's going to work for them, but them for a short portion of their day. And when you start to see that boat sink, you don't have to keep shoving it in the ocean. You just got to take it out for a second, let the water go out, and just try
Yeah.
again. So I love that philosophy. I learned it back in 2011. When I started going into training and wanted to do my own training and work with athletes, and it's been the thing that just it's like it always just brings me back to make
Hmm.
sure that I'm just asking myself, am I really doing the right thing with them? Because you
Yeah.
could go write up a great day every day and it just burn them out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing that I'm still prone to, even though I didn't ruin my senior year with, patellar tendonitis in both knees from too much plyos, but I learned the lesson the hard way, and it was right at the end of the year when NC2As were coming up. It's the first time I'd ever qualified for those. Pac-12s are coming up, Pac-10s at the time, and my legs are just killing me, and I was like, what do I do? And the guys were like, you need to rest. And I was just like, I can't rest. Like my brain was like, I can't rest. I've been training this hard for this long. It's my senior year, and it's a definite problem. I think I harken back to I call it the old American, and it's like with vitamins or anything else, you go, well, if a little bit is good, a lot's better, and you're like, okay, well, you can do that with vitamin C. You can do it with water soluble vitamins. You can take all you want. But when you're taking fat soluble, like A, D,
Yep.
E, and K, if you take all of the ones that you want to, if you just mega dose on those, they can become toxic and
Yep.
quite literally kill you. So it's like, it's not always, more and more and more. If a little bit is good, we
Yep.
think a lot is better. Oh yeah, this new training, oh, that really works. I can feel it. So now I'm going to go back to that well. And it's like, yeah, I've learned that really the hard way. I think in some ways, I think I may be babying my athletes too much just because of that. Because I'm always
Yeah.
guarding. I'm like, man, the last thing you want to do is get to your big meets at the end of the year and I call it jumping on razor blades. When
Oh
you're
yeah.
like, when you're going up to the bar and you can see it on people's faces when they're putting their foot down, they're already
Yeah.
grimacing even before their foot's hit the ground. You're like, that's not a good place to be in, right? Everybody loves
Right.
that jump workout where you haven't jumped for like 4 months and you come out and your legs feel great. You can take about 100 jumps. So yeah, I hear you. That's without a doubt the best piece of wisdom for any of you coaches out there is there are a lot of great things to learn. There's great coaching techniques. We're throwing around a lot of terms but that recovery that Brady's mentioning and just in general, built not just built in to recover, because I think sometimes people think, well, if I can recover them quicker, I can get even more work done. So there's that temptation. But so at least you're learning, well, they got to recover. But then there's a mental, right? And then there's
Yep.
just overall, physical. How do you peak for these big meets at the end of the season? You're starting to back off quite a bit if you're smart. I've heard stories of coaches that, these inexperienced coaches are like, oh man, we're going even harder this week. And you're like, you're an idiot. You don't go harder the last week before you guys are getting ready. You're going to back off a little bit. You've been hitting them hard on weights and plyos and all that stuff. Just let the body recover and they're going to feel some extra bounce. Yeah. So well said. Well
Thank
said,
you.
Brady. Way to add. And so some of you that may sound obvious, and then to others, it probably sounds crazy if you have that mindset of, we're going to work, work, work. Last quick one. I remember that junior year, I think, even though I wasn't lifting, I do remember training like 6 days a week. I remember, Monday through Friday, and then a meet Saturday, and I think I was still doing stuff on Sunday. So it was either 6 or 7 days a week, and it was a frustrating year. I think, for many reasons, but I'm sure that was part of it, even though I didn't know any better at the time. Just like, oh yeah, you feel like I understand that some people feel guilty if they're not working. And then this is just a quick aside, but I thought the easiest way to make money would be to start up a running club because all those distance runners are those kinds of people. They're like, if you start up a running club, you say, hey, we meet every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at this time. Those people are going to email you and they're going to give you hate mail if you're late. And then where's my workout? And then, like they got to run every day or that, they're like, I didn't run my 10 miles today. I'm like, dude, I didn't run 10 miles last year. So, you missed it for one day. I don't run that far in a year. When I demonstrate for these kids, I'm jogging a 30 foot curve and jumping over a very low bar. not a whole lot of speed or endurance involved. All right, sir. Brady, it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Looking forward to hearing some great things. Please, anything that I can do to promote you or your athletes. I don't know how the rules work. I'm really bad at that. So, when it comes to athletes and podcasts, I've had some athletes go, "Oh, I can't do a podcast. My coach says I can't." Don Tavius was graduated. I know there's no issue there. And then, as far as showing their videos and meets,
Yeah.
I'm just like that guy. I'm just like, I'm going to show it. I don't know. I'm all about promoting the athletes and the coaches and the programs because you guys are out there working your butts off and having these great results. And I want everybody else to be able to see them. So just let me know what I can do along those lines.
Yeah, for sure. And if you ever want me to come back, I'll be more than welcome more than
Yeah.
willing.
Yeah, let's do it. If you can think of, I've been trying to do this for a while now. I haven't done one for a bit. I've done a couple podcasts where I had, multiple people in on the call.
Yeah.
One time was planned and one turned out it was interesting that Vashti Cunningham's dad, Randall Cunningham, that I'd met at a meet, and he was very gracious and even talking to me, I thought. But I said, hey, I'd love to get you on a podcast sometime. And he's one of the busiest people that I know because I think he's a pastor at his church and he coaches his daughter, and she's an
Hmm.
international athlete, right? So they got all these complexities going on. And so he was like, I could see by the look on his face, he's like, yeah, if I can find a minute, and literally I'm in the middle of a podcast one time and I see my phone's ringing and it says Randall Cunningham. And I'm like, just a second. Like I put him on, says, yeah, if you have any time, I happen to have some time right now. And I'm like, okay, I sent him the Zoom. He calls back. All of a sudden he's in on the call and we had one of those things going and it was great. It was
Yeah.
very off the cuff, very just like talking about ideas and training and this and that. So yeah, I'd like to get more and more people. One of my coaches, Alan Hankel, who used to work with Doug Nordquist, he was like that. He asked me about a year ago. He says, "What do you think about like some kind of a jump, symposium or this that?" And I'm like, "I'm all for it. I don't know how you get it to work, but I would." First of all, I would love to be able to speak in a couple of different languages to talk to some of the people overseas because those are the ones I'm, even, it sounds crazy. I look at your stuff and I'm watching athletes and trainings and whatever, and I love peeking behind the door anywhere. And I especially love that look. I feel like in the Wizard of Oz, like pay no attention to the man over there doing this stuff. It's like I'm the guy walking over behind the curtain going, what are they doing in Russia? What are they doing over there in Poland? What they got a girl, Maya Sladinska, who at 15 was jumping almost 6 feet. I'm just like going, I don't have any of those. I want one. How do you build those? So I'm always the guy asking those questions. So let's do it. Let's get
All right.
some more power to the brain trust.
For sure.
All right. Well, hey Brady, you have a good one. Enjoy that
Thanks, you too.
Super Bowl. I'm going Niners. When I put
Yeah.
my money on them, I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to catch up to the Steelers. I think
Well,
Steelers
hey,
have
we're
six titles, right?
yeah, yeah. But I'll be honest with you, everybody here at Cal, I think, is rooting for the 49ers because Eric Harris, he's on the defense. He's one of our alumni. He's a great guy. Shout out to him. He actually is real close friends with my wife and her family, and he's such a great guy. Knows the guys here. They like to donate money to our strength and conditioning program, so that's why we
Awesome.
get all those fun tools. Talking about funding,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm with you. We're definitely cheering for the 49ers.
What position is Eric? Where does he play?
He was a safety at a point. I don't know what he is now, but I know that they brought him in the last couple games. I think his first game where he played was when they played against the Washington Commanders, like right around New Year's. I think it was on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, something like
Yeah,
that. So,
yeah, they've been losing a couple guys in the secondary. They lost Tuafonga, right?
yep.
They lost Hufanga. I can't remember. He got hurt, and then I think the guy they brought in got hurt. So now they're like down two strong safeties. So I'm like, yeah, the strong safety and the slot and all those guys that the hybrid outside backer types. You
Yeah.
got to have a lot of those to make it through a season. So
No,
yeah,
for sure.
awesome. All right, well, let's
All
do
right,
it.
man.
Thanks
All
again,
right. Well,
Brady.
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Hey, you're welcome. It was an honor having you on. Appreciate your
That
time.
was a pleasure.
All right. Have a good one, bud.
All right.
We'll talk
You
soon.
too.
Okay.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for us here on another episode of Raise the Bar. We were speaking with Brady Wert, the multis and jumps coach. at Penn West, California in Pennsylvania. He is a former decathlete who was trying to get himself into the Olympic trials at one time in his career. So we have some similar background in goals and dreams without quite seeing them realized. And it was great talking shop with Brady. He knows a lot of stuff about all the events as a multi. So that kind of background is always of value to us here on Raise the Bars, where we're seeking to get faster and stronger and more explosive and to train more efficiently and to recover better and all the things that come to the table for great performances. So hearing it from Brady's point of view is very awesome. A lot of great insights there. We look forward to seeing him again here on the future. We talked the future of track and field and how to improve the state of track and field here in the U.S. And don't know if we came up with any answers, but it's a common theme. So join us again here in a couple weeks. We'll have more guests on. I'm trying to put together some multiple guest podcasts. We haven't done one of those in a while, and I need to go on a couple rants coming up. So 1 week from Super Bowl Sunday, we're on a 7-day countdown until kickoff next weekend. Not quite yet, but a little bit less, a little bit more than a week, as it looks like looking at the clock. Until then, this is Troy Haines signing off on another episode of Raise the Bar. We'll see you here real soon.